Well, we had an interesting Raw. When I mean interesting, I didn't mean anything big happened. I'm talking about it was still terrible. In an interesting way. Every Raw is bad in its own unique way. Of course, the difference with this one was the date. Oh, and Ric Flair was there. Over the course of the show, we technically were trying to hype up the return. Of Christian in ring, obviously in a personal feud over Randy Orton, gawking and taunting over exactly what was going to happen at Backlash, that he was going to embarrass and out wrestle Edge in the most highly advertised match unnecessarily in history. Confirming if Christian backs off of this unsanctioned match that he's a coward. Basic enough. These guys kept going back and forth, and pretty much the most focused part of the show, next to R-Truth and Drew McIntyre's tag team match that was a winner-take-all WWE title and 24/7 championship match. Next up was supposed to be Garza versus Kevin Owens. Before that, we had Charlie Caruso interview both Garza and Selena Vega about if he wins, he gets a title match opportunity against Apollo Crews, probably a future championship opportunity on Raw or probably Extreme Rules. If you guys seen the new logo, I already talked about that in the Backlash review, so I'm not gonna try to waste my breath. My freaking throat is as weak as my dick looking at Nia Jax. The match was bearable as it can be. Of course, it seems like Andrade was going to play a factor after saying if congrats, but if you lose, I'll be there to fix what you started. Obviously, there's interjection going on with Zelina Vega's clients after what happened in their tag match that ended up with Zelina getting hit by Andrade after both men start fighting after their tag match with Apollo and Kevin. And Kevin Owens entered first, and Kevin Owens was actually looking back. That was actually good, like that was actually a good focus for once. Raw actually focuses on injuries now after Angel Garza came in their in their previous one-on-one fight, literally ending with Garza attacking Kevin Owens before the bell even rang. Before he even entered the ring, just hit his knee, and that ankle just became a primordial part of the match. Stomping on it. Immediately after Garza hit the ring, he tried to go in for a running drop kick on the leg. That was decent focusing, and I wish more matches were actually like that. But we know WWE at this point. They'll try a different thing where they're smart, and then they try what I'm about to rant about later in the afternoon. Just wait, folks. We, of course, had Andrade coming in as soon as Garza started getting the better of Kevin Owens, until Kevin tossed him out of the ring. Another interference happened when Andrade was coming to talk to the ref. Immediately a distraction out of Garza taking advantage, even though that was off Garza's part. He got stunnered. Kevin Owens wins. It ended up with both of them blowing the gasket until Zelina Vega came back into the ring because she was out, because they kept arguing when Garza was out, and then she comes back to break up the fight for them to both come back into the ring and come backstage. I don't think we had a I don't think we, in technicality, we had a blow off or what's gonna happen next week. We had another backstage segment. We had a lot of backstage segments in the middle of the show. I don't know why. Like, this show is just a piece of nothing. We're trying to experiment with the skit remarks, even though my opinion, I thought the corporate ladder match was a borderline bust that nobody's gonna remember in the next several months, except the part when you know that they're not gonna die. They got tossed out of the building by King Corbin. Yeah, it came into the interview. Caruso, no, I think there's a different interviewer talking about Lashley's failure, and of course the interference of Lana. MVP was about to discuss it just about now with Lashley interjection in the middle of the conversation. It was a pretty okay promo. Obviously, Lashley finally got some words to say other than just staying silent. Pretty okay back and forth with Lana and with MVP, and of course, then earlier in later in the conversation, Lashley filing for declaring for divorce with Lana. Even though they should have done this as soon as Rusev was released out of the company. They weren't even going that much into the top card. They were just feuding. Stupidly, in the worst marriage segment probably on Raw history. Teddy Long's marriage to Crystal was better than this. At least there was a borderline reaction. Nobody was going to watch an extra 30 minutes and an obvious attack from Rusev from that big ass cake. That was more obvious than Randy Orton's big ass cake attack on Evolution back in 04. Next up was the Viking Prophets or something, facing off against Akira Tozawa and Ninjas. All I know is he's a big black tall guy in the fray against the Street Profits, and they won their squash match. Somehow they're lighting together, and then later on, Big Show just thought, hey, you guys been having these challenges all month, so why don't you end it with a tag team title match to break the tie? That ends in a DQ, I'ma slap the TV. And how come it took one guy just giving the brightest idea, poof, why don't you guys just get a tag team title match? Over like a month of it not being defended. And they literally missed out on a pay-per-view just to do some skit shit. Really? There's some Grimm's Toy Show shit. No one really cares about the Street Profits and Viking Raiders since they treat the Viking Raiders or slash the Road Raiders plus, I think it's whatever, or the Viking Experience, that's now their finishing name. They treat them like borderline comic relief. Especially Ivar, even though he was shown to be a dual threat in the ring. And these guys seem to have this cool warframe mentality. What happened to that? What happened to that? I'm serious. And people try to think that it's borderline entertaining. It's not. The Street Profits are barely ever funny. And the Viking Raiders just used their just run off joke that Ivar likes turkey legs and Eric's ugly. That's literally the joke. Because they're Vikings. These guys are literally just athletic NXT fans. And it's just dumb that Akira Tozawa, this is the only way Akira Tozawa has a reason to be on the roster. They keeping somebody like Ethan Carter III that's probably going to show up at Slammiversary I think, next month. This is agitating to a T, man. And then it's like, we want the smoke to continue with that joke, even though it ended with nothing even happening. And even though you have like a 7-foot guy, they had to bring out the Big Show for the numbers game. It was the weakest part of the show, and it was so corny, man. And it just ended up with Big Show was like, maybe you guys shut the hell up, Big Show. You haven't been on TV since like literally when they replayed you on Mania. On Mania, you were a replay for a Mania moment, just to fail to beat McIntyre after he just won the world title against Lesnar. Why now do they show you on TV? And then they just made you an immediate comic relief. I don't get the consistency that they can't make top guys like have a target for the world title. I don't get that. Next up, Dominic just attacks Rollins. We just went into a stock of words of Rollins coming around the suit, just sensing Dominic would be here after saying that he would come to Raw. Out of nowhere, with Mysterio pleading for them not to hurt his son, after Rollins just said that Murphy and Theory is looking for him around the training facility. Ending up with a behind-the-back assault by Dominic. Bloody, bloody, blah. We're probably going to have a tag team match involving Dominic and Mysterio, or Dominic versus Rollins, or Mysterio versus Rollins. Either way, it's going to be something dumb. Uh, it's at least crazy to see Dominic actually put his hands on somebody other than assisting Mysterio back at Survivor Series of last year against Lesnar when he did a double 619 and plus a frog splash. So that was cool. I heard he's being trained. The guy just looks like a skinnier Samoa Joe. Other than that, hopefully he succeeds well. I probably think I know he has a pull in the WWE because of course you're Rey Mysterio's son. He's a Hall of Fame. He's literally a living Hall of Famer, so it makes sense. But it's like, at least this is pseudo personal. Next up, the Iconics versus Liv Morgan and Natalya, and it just ends up with Natalya again technically turning heel because she's a jobber. So why doesn't she turn heel every year until just basically turning babyface again, just to have a weird losing streak, and then we just remember she exists when she gets a title shot? So she's just tagging with Liv Morgan that hasn't been on TV for like 4 weeks or something after losing to Charlotte, and then she comes out losing to the Iconics after getting tossed out of the match after breaking a pinfall. So Liv Morgan was taken out, and then Natalya was hit with the Iconic finisher, and the Iconics called out Bayley and Sasha Banks. I mean, the biggest spot to think of was literally just that dropkick from the top. Other than the missile dropkick, nothing else was a virtue in the match, just to make Natalya still have screen time, even though she's better off in a way better promotion that treats her heritage, with some respect for once. She comes around blaming Liv Morgan for the match, even though she's the one that got pinned. I don't get it. And it just ends up with just an awkward transitional heel moment. And for her to use that veteran, I created the women's division. I mean, I set a standard for the women's division, even though you had the least success in it. I don't understand that mentality that they're trying to make Natalya have, even though she barely makes that to pull to actually have title matches. So I don't get that. They even did that, I think, 2017, 2016. And so many times they try to make her heel. They even made her turn on fucking Becky Lynch. And I think everybody turned on Becky Lynch. Paige turned on Becky Lynch. It ended up with later in the night, the Iconics getting an answer by Sasha Banks and Bayley. Then we had Apollo Crews versus Shelton Benjamin one-on-one. I obviously didn't have words to understand other than a backstage segment involving MVP consulting with the United States Championship, and obviously MVP that has a lot of history with the United States title, and because Apollo's black, it just comes into stuff like that. We're trying to recruit Apollo, obviously for that reason only, and just warning about Shelton Benjamin. Basic running knee that Shelton always does. A missing heel kick that he always does. That repeat heel kick that was caught twice by Apollo. It took off a roll up after Apollo was literally struggling in the middle earlier in the match. A jumping drop kick, of course, standing moonsault, standing shooting star press, and just a roll up victory. Apollo wins. He looked triumphant on pay per view, but he still gets up roll up victories, and he even had he had a DQ finish when he defended his title for the first time. So this is sad. Next up was a tag team title defense. Drew McIntyre and R-Truth after R-Truth came out of nowhere, just said out of nowhere that we're gonna defend our titles while facing the tag team match. R-Truth is at least the funniest part of the show. Of course, bringing up how it's gonna suck that he's gonna lose his stuff when he divorces Lana, and he lost the titles. That was at least something. The match was okay. Bicycle kick was missed. It ended off a splash from Truth after I think a Claymore kick. So MVP got pinned. Well, it would have been crazy if at least they could have just. I mean, if MVP still tried again to attack R-Truth from behind and win the 24/7 title, at least make MVP at least feel somewhat menacing. In that aspect, we've been having these backstage segments involving Christian just getting consulted by veterans. Big Show just telling him to fight Randy, and they kept it over Christian's medical history. Obviously, that's why he hasn't been wrestling for the last couple of years. And Ric Flair just telling Randy, because he's cool with him, and Randy's capable of. It's just generic warning crap that we know that he's gonna fight, or whether this match is gonna be caught short, because they started wrestling at like 9:57. I mean, 10:57, so we know that this match was gonna end quickly. Nia Jax gets a rematch for the Raw Women's title against Asuka after a double countout finish at Backlash on pay-per-view. Dude, I don't care. And they try so hard to try to think that Nia is this dominant force, even though it shows that she's clumsy in the ring, has no appeal, shows to be unlikable, and she can barely look strong in any of the matches, even though for most of the matches that she wrestles, it's supposed to look like a one-sided affair with a one-sided generational star supposed to destroy the opponent. And she comes around losing to Asuka out of nowhere after it's supposed to be fitted as a DQ after she literally pushed the ref. So that should be an automatic DQ until Asuka got the roll up. There was roundhouse kicks, counters into sleeper holes, a power bomb, a lariat, a power bomb on the floor. I am so shocked Asuka was good enough to take that. That's a big up on Asuka. She's always a badass to see. Another badass, Kairi Sane, sad to see her not there cheering her on, or not to hear her say Baka a lot. That could at least get the Weeb alert off my system for a while. So it counted off that. It's just depressing. At least this was a better match because it actually had a finish. So in that aspect, it should have ended in DQ. Thanks to what the hell Nia pulled. It was dumb. I mean, at least for some points, the spots that were risque were actually the best part of some match. But it was just dumb. The finish was just awkward and dumb, and it's supposed to technicality give Nia like more of a screw job, even though it makes her feel retarded because you don't just push the ref, especially if you're not even the champion in the first point. Nia's doing that and it's just making her look more of an idiot. So that's apparently enough just to be the worst match on the show in that aspect, but at least it's better than what they had on Backlash. That was a worser match because of the slow pacing it had, and it had a double countout finish on pay-per-view. It was just going to finish it on Raw, so probably we're going to see like a kendo stick match because they can't use more creative weapons on something called Extreme Rules that I wish they changed the name of. But that was it. Asuka retains the Raw Women's Championship. Next up was Christian versus Randy Orton. And as soon as the match was going to happen, as soon as it began, Ric Flair came out of nowhere. And it started looking like the most corniest stuff ever. I wish I didn't get to hear the wrestler's voice every time. Because even though they have an impromptu crowd, they literally never say anything else other than boo or yay whenever the wrestlers speak. So it was like, I gotta do this, Rick. I gotta do that. You know how corny that sounds? And it ended up with Ric Flair immediately exiting the ring until he pretended and got an immediate low. He gave Christian an immediate low blow for Randy to hit a punt as soon as he paused for a second, getting the immediate victory and calling for a stretcher. I.e., Randy likes punting Canadians. He punted Chris Jericho. Well, technically that got him out of TV. He punted Edge and he punted Christian. He just needs Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. Well, Sami Zayn's technically on SmackDown until they probably made a trade for him. But that would be weird because he was previously IC champion. So it ended with that finish. Well, Randy Orton just setting off warnings and why did you come back? blah blah blah. It isn't like the bullshit that he did with Edge because he went more personal after hitting the punt and then just whispering in his ears or just warning him in his face. It's not even the equivalent of when Steve Austin stunners you. He screams and talks shit to your face. It just feels like it's supposed to be pseudo-sympathetic, and it's so dumb because you don't get that legitimate crowd reaction. Because imagine how much of a pop it would be for if Randy was punting punting a wrestler on pay-per-view after it's been near a decade since the move was even used. And back then, the punt kick made Randy the most menacing part of Raw. It made me a fan of Orton like to 2007 to 2010 until like 2011 when they made him babyface or something. I know it was 2010 when they made him babyface, like latter half of 2010 when he was like done with Legacy. So yeah, that happens. Raw gets a 4. Here's a conclusion. Wacko bullshit. There was like so many backstage segments. It was like equivalent to 7 backstage segments. Most of them at least ended off with a match, at least a competent question, and most of them just ended up with just comic relief. Majority of it is just a Street Profits, Big Show, then like 4 involving Christian, why he can't do the match, why he will do the match, all because he just hasn't been wrestling. And to be honest, who gives a shit about Christian? I love Christian, and I think he should be a Hall of Famer someday. Just, by God, just go back to Impact when you were actually treated seriously. And just, wow, God damn it, just, this felt nothing. Like, who was supposed to actually be made legit? Nia Jax got treated as a joke. But the only thing that's proceedingly getting my interest is probably the dynamic with Andrade and Garza, and practically what they're doing with Lashley and Lana. And that's practically, and they were trying to tease probably a formation of some faction involving Natalya and Lana, because they've been getting screwed over. Even though Natalya's been getting screwed over since she'd been signed, and Lana literally has no gift other than looking hot. So that's practically it. That's it. It's more depressing than a guy actually making a top 10 list of the hottest women and just scoffing at them for the last, like, 11 minutes of him going, he even made, like, ejaculation sound effects and editing over a video. You know how sad that has to be? You wear a green faggot mask, just reacting to just female wrestlers. God damn, it's so sad. This show is just so sad. I just wish they actually treated some more shit seriously and made it a more competent show for like people to watch it weekly. I don't want to watch the Viking Prophets. I don't care about Randy Orton's feuds. I just wish he just retired or some shit at this point. Dude, like, has a near 20 years in this company. Get over it. Like, what else do you have to accomplish? You don't even get other guys over that much. And I have to see Apollo Crews as champion more. And just Jesus Christ, I'm just waiting for just crowds to come back to at least give some semblance of excitement for the next pay-per-view or something. Because at least July, technicality, this stuff will be erased. I think most of the people already forgot that this virus even happened. So yeah, that's it coming from the DST show. Like, comment, and subscribe. Hope you guys liked the video. And give me your opinions on Backlash and even Monday Night Raw and in the future going on in WWE. I want to hear your opinions and help me grow to 30 and more.